Let's talk about NFL over-under win total bets. The season's about to begin. Every team has an over-under win total. There are a few that really stand out to me as far as having value goes. Now, a couple of teams that I do like that I don't want to get into now because I talked about them on my Super Bowl long shots episode. I like the Vikings over and I like the Titans over. I picked them as my Super Bowl long shots, so obviously I like them to go over their win totals, but I don't want to rehash everything that I said in that episode, so I'm going to go with three other over-under win totals that I like. They all fall in the AFC, actually. It's two unders and one over, and it's a couple of teams, actually, that are getting a lot of preseason hype, so we'll dive right into it now. The team that's getting the most hype in the preseason is the New York Jets. Their over-under win total is 9.5. I like the under at plus 100 at FanDuel. So many people are going over at the Jets. So many people are picking them to at least contend for the Super Bowl. You've got, obviously, Aaron Rodgers coming in, the big name. They're on Hard Knocks. People seem to think that you have the great Jets defense. You swap out that awful quarterback room with Zach Wilson and Mike White and Joe Flacco. You put in Aaron Rodgers. That's a Super Bowl caliber team. I don't exactly disagree. There are a few reasons why I'm not high on the Jets. And the biggest thing that it comes down to for me is that division and the Jets' schedule. Because the AFC East, I think, is the best division in football. You've got four teams that can legitimately go to the playoffs. The Jets can go to the playoffs, so they can certainly win 10 games, hit that over, and go to the postseason. But somebody's got to finish in last place. And to me, that might be the Jets. And if you look at that schedule, it is very tough in the beginning of the season. And I think that is key, absolutely key, when you talk about a new quarterback and Aaron Rodgers adjusting to a new team. That's going to take some time. You look at the past few years, the big quarterback additions that got to their new teams, even the teams that won the Super Bowl, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Tom Brady, and the Los Angeles Rams with Matthew Stafford, it took them a while to really get going. If you remember, the Bucs started off at 7-5, then they won their last four games. Brady was amazing in those last four games. Then he took them to the Super Bowl. The Rams were 7-4. That's a pretty decent start, but they finished the season on a 5-1 streak. They won the championship. Last year, obviously, Russell Wilson never got off to a good start with the Broncos. So I think it's going to take at least some time for Aaron Rodgers to adapt to his new teammates, the new offensive system. He barely played in the preseason, played those two series against the Giants. So I think the Jets are going to get off to a tough start, and people are talking about their easy back half of the schedule. But that's going to be a big problem in New York. The media capital of the world, the spotlight on Aaron Rodgers, all the controversy there. If they're off to like a 2-6 start, or even a 3-5 start, a 4-4 start, that's going to create a lot of questions about Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. There's going to be talk about Robert Saleh's job security, and I think that's going to be a huge issue and be a tough thing for them to overcome. So they started home against the Bills on Monday night. Certainly a winnable game, but I like the Bills to win the division, so I think the Bills are winning that game. Then you go at Dallas, home versus New England, not an easy game. The Jets haven't beaten New England in forever. Home versus Kansas City, that's a loss probably. At Denver, maybe that's a win, but then you're home versus Philadelphia. Then you're against the Giants, and then you're against the Chargers. And then you've got at Buffalo, home versus Miami. So a bunch of tough games. I could see the Jets starting off really, really slow. And like I said, I think that's going to be really, really tough for the Jets to recover from. So you've got that hard schedule. You've got that tough division with the Bills, who I still think are the class of the division. And even if you think Miami, the Jets, that's kind of a toss-up, at least Miami has that continuity. With quarterback, Tua is coming back. He's going to at least start the season healthy. They've got better weapons. Say what you will about the Jets' weapons. They're not as good of a tandem as Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I know Miami is a little banged up defensively right now, but I trust their coach more. Like, Robert Saleh has had 2 losing seasons. I think people are liking what he's saying on Hard Knocks and some of the inspirational things on Hard Knocks. Maybe he'll be a good coach, but I don't think he's been impressive in the first 2 seasons as the Jets head coach. So you look at the tough start, you look at the schedule, that tough division, and frankly, what Aaron Rodgers did last year. Like, he was not a good quarterback. I think he was an average quarterback. He was kind of mediocre. If you look at a bunch of his stats, they were middle of the road. And if you just watched those games, like, Aaron Rodgers was not impressive. He was missing open receivers. Christian Watson came on at the end of the year, but there were a lot of high hopes for him and Romeo Doubs and that Packers offense. He was just missing guys. Now, I guess maybe he was a little bit banged up, but he wasn't super hurt like Josh Allen with that forearm injury. He just did not play really well, and maybe part of that was having no chemistry with his receivers, but why is he going to have amazing chemistry with the Jets receivers? Obviously, Garrett Wilson is very good, but like I said, that's going to take time, and he's 40 years old now. When you have a bad season, it's hard to bank on a quick turnaround. Like, Tom Brady was not great in his last season with the Patriots. He went to Tampa Bay and was a lot better, had better receivers around him. So that's kind of the blueprint I think you're looking at with Aaron Rodgers for him to have a turnaround. But he basically had the same team around him the year before, except he didn't have Devontae Adams, and then he kind of fell off a cliff a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's just kind of an average or a little bit above average quarterback with the Jets. And then, I'm sorry, but I just can't get over the fact that it is the Jets. This is the team that has the longest playoff drought, I believe, in sports right now. The longest active playoff drought. I think they might be tied with some hockey team. But they haven't been to the playoffs since the 2010 season when they went to the AFC Championship game with Rex Ryan. Things just go poorly for the Jets. It's just the way it is. Changing coaches, changing quarterbacks. They drafted Zach Wilson, number 2 overall. He was going to be the savior. It hasn't mattered. So I'm not convinced that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the savior, especially with a tough schedule and that tough division. So the Jets, they can go 9-8, have a much better season than last year, and still go under. So I like the Jets under 9.5 at even money. That's my first win total bet that I like for the year. Now let's go with an over. Another team that's getting a lot of buzz, and I do buy into the hype a little bit. That's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are minus 150 to go over 8.5 wins. Now, so the over's juiced because they are getting that hype, but I'm fine with that. You talk about the Jets having kind of that bad juju around them, just a bad organization. They haven't been good in over a decade, really 13 years. The Steelers are never bad. Like, literally never. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. That goes back to 2007. You have to go back to 2003 for the last time the Steelers had a losing record, period. That's 20 years. So when Ben Roethlisberger was there and not so good in the beginning, when he was bad at the end, when Kenny Pickett was bad for the beginning of last year, when Mitchell Trubisky was starting, they somehow won 9 games, never had a losing season. So they went 9-8 last year. The Steelers have that pedigree. They have that floor. That's really important for me when you're making a lot of these futures bets. If you have a team that doesn't have that awful, terrible, bad case scenario, that's a good team to bet on. The Steelers don't have that bad case scenario. The Jets' worst case scenario, they're going 4-13 because that's just what the Jets do. The Steelers' worst case scenario, I mean, I guess they're going 7-10, but again, they've never had a losing record under Mike Tomlin. They were pretty decent last year. That defense was really, really good. TJ Watt missed a bunch of games, and they still went great down the stretch. And you saw those signs. They went 7-2 down the stretch. Kenny Pickett played a lot better. Had 1 interception, I believe, in his last 8 games. Wasn't terrific. I think the hype train around him is getting a little bit crazy. He had more interceptions than touchdowns last year. I think he had the second worst passer rating in the NFL to Zach Wilson. But he's going to be better. You saw what he did in the preseason. I think he had a perfect passer rating. That's not going to happen in the regular season. I don't think he has superstar caliber play in him, but he could be a decent player. All the Steelers really need is a average quarterback, and with that defense, with George Pickens, with Najee Harris, with Deontay Johnson, they've got good weapons. This team can win 10, maybe even 11 games. A lot of people are loving the AFC North. I don't quite love it as much as everybody else. I think the AFC East is going to be better. In the NFC, I think the NFC East could be better. And the AFC North, you've got good teams, but I don't think really any of them have improved much compared to last year. So let me break it down. We've got the Bengals, who were terrific last year. They were in the hunt for the number 1 seed until that DeMar Hamlin game was suspended and never finished. So the Bengals have been really, really good the last few years. They lost some really key defensive players, especially in that secondary. And Joe Burrow is coming off that calf injury. It looks like he's on track to play week 1, but that's a little iffy there. The Bengals are, of course, going to be good, but I don't think they're going to be better than last year. The Browns, I don't know. Deshaun Watson was really, really good 3 years ago. Who knows what to make of them? I would be a little surprised if he has a tremendous season. That, to me, is an average to below average team. And then you've got the Ravens, who they made the playoffs last year, but Lamar Jackson didn't play the last 6 weeks. He's done that 2 years in a row. He's missed the end of the season 2 years in a row because of injuries. And with the way he plays, it's not that hard to predict injuries with Lamar Jackson. You could always say, well, this team will be good barring injury. Well, barring injury really matters for the Baltimore Ravens. Rashad Bateman at receiver. He's been injured since he's come into the league. Odell Beckham Jr., he's been injured forever. 2 ACL surgeries. I think he's in his 30s right now. He's not going to be a Pro Bowl caliber receiver. Maybe he's okay. Maybe he's one of the best receivers the Ravens have had with Lamar Jackson, but that's not saying much. And they've got some defensive problems. They already have injuries. They're going to have trouble rushing the passer. They have some kind of floor with Harbaugh, I think, but I don't think they're going to be a great team. So I kind of think that the AFC North is a little bit wide open for Pittsburgh. The Bengals are obviously the better team, but with a little bit of luck, you could see Pittsburgh have a really, really good season, and they have a much easier schedule than I think some people think, because they do play in that tough division or perceived tough division. Maybe people think they have a really hard record. But if you look at the projections, they have a top 10 easy schedule. They open against the 49ers. But then after that, you go home versus Cleveland, at Vegas, who I don't like at all, at Houston, who I don't like at all, Baltimore, at the Rams, who could be terrible, versus Jackson versus Tennessee. I mean, you're playing that AFC South, which it's always the worst division in football. Who knows what the Packers are going to be? The Cardinals might be the worst team in football. So many winnable games for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just like them a bunch. They've got a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. You keep TJ Watt healthy. You keep Kenny Pickett just improving just enough. This is a team that, again, they don't have to win 10 games to hit the over. 8.5, just go 9-8. Do what you've been doing, and this is probably the best Pittsburgh team in, 4 years, 5 years. So I like that over. Give me over 8.5 for Pittsburgh. And one more that jumped out at me. I'll talk about it a little quicker because it's just not a good team. The Indianapolis Colts, their over-under is 6.5, and they are minus 104 for the under. And boy, do I like that under. This is a Colts team that is going to be in contention for the number 1 pick in the draft. Maybe their future is bright. People love Anthony Richardson. He's got a ton of talent. There's no way he's going to be good at the start. You just watch the preseason. Kenny Pickett's amazing in the preseason. That kind of means nothing. You can have some confidence that he's not going to be awful. Anthony Richardson is expected to be super raw because he didn't have as much experience. He looked crazy raw in the preseason. Now, he made some amazing plays that jumped out at you and showed why he was the number 4 pick in the draft and why people think he could be the best quarterback in that draft. But he completed, less than 50% of his passes, made so many mistakes that over the course of a season, over the course of games when he's playing the entire game against first stringers, he's going to have a lot of trouble. And the thing for me is, the Steelers finished the season strong. They got better. The Colts finished the season horribly. And I don't think they got much better. Maybe you like Shane Steichen as a coach, but we don't really know what he's going to be. And like Richardson, I'm sure he's going to take time to develop. Just look at what the Colts did at the end of last season, if you don't remember. They lost, so they were 4-5-1, ended up 4-12-1. So lost 7 straight games to end the season. They lost against Dallas 54-19. They lost that game against Minnesota, where I think they had the biggest blown lead of all time in the regular season. Lost by 17 to the Chargers, lost by 28 to the Giants, and lost to the Texans in the season finale in the games that the Texans kind of had to lose to get the number 1 draft pick. So they were terrible down the stretch of the season, and I think you could see a lot of similar type of losses this season. And remember, they're not starting Gardner Minshew. So I don't think they really care about winning games. They want Anthony Richardson to develop, and maybe they want a high draft pick. And they are in a bad division, but the Jaguars are going to be halfway decent. Trevor Lawrence is obviously really, really good. The Titans, as I mentioned on my Super Bowl long shot show, I think they're going to be better than people expect, especially with Tannehill healthy to start the season. They were very unhealthy on defense, especially last year. Had a bunch of people on IR. And the Texans are going to be better. I don't know how good they'll be, but the defense, you hear some buzz about the defense. Maybe it'll be better, especially with DeMeco Ryans there. And they've gone 4 wins, I think 3 wins, something like that in the last 3 seasons. They're going to try to be at least a little bit better this year. Maybe they win 5 or 6 games. I think the Colts take that spot for last place in the division as the truly awful, awful team in the AFC South. So, again, the Colts, I don't think, have much interest in winning this year. It's all about Anthony Richardson's development. Jonathan Taylor is on PUP to start the season. So, even if he wants to come back and play, he can't play the first 4 games of the season. So, I don't know what kind of help he's going to have. Maybe he'll be a good fantasy quarterback and get you a bunch of rushing yards. But he's going to complete like 45% of his passes, throw a bunch of interceptions. Be fun to watch, but he's not going to win a lot of games. So I like that Colts under a lot. You go 6-7, they are 2 wins better than last year, and that under is still hitting. So again, under 6.5, only -104. So there are a bunch of over under win totals that I like, but just to keep it simple, those are 3 that really, really jump out at me. So to quickly recap, the 3 over-under win totals that I like this year, I like the Colts under 6.5 at -104. The Jets under 9.5 at +100. And the over that I really, really like, that's the Pittsburgh Steelers over 8.5 at -150.